of the people of Pakistan. We have a 75-year history of constitutions and the effort to resolve these conflicts. We just had a small debate that should we talk about judges, judgments, or the institution? I say we need to talk about all three, because all three are to blame. Let history judge the judgments. But the judges also have to answer. Again, perhaps to history. But the institution remains. The institution, if nothing else, if it cannot rectify the mistakes, it should perhaps express some level of remorse. It should at least say that what was done was wrong. My purpose here is not to assign blame, but the purpose here is that today we have a serious crisis in the country. It's a crisis which is unprecedented, which is perhaps existential. And we all these organs of state have to play their role. They cannot abdicate the responsibility to the other. The Parliament, the executive, and the judiciary are equally to blame for whatever has happened. But I always assign perhaps a greater proportion of the blame to the judiciary, because it failed to protect the sanctity of the ballot. Because when the elections were being stolen, when the sanctity of the ballot was being violated, there was only one institution which could protect it, which was the judiciary. If the Parliament is not representative, then the executive leadership drawn from that Parliament is also not representative. Then the laws made by that Parliament, which are then questioned or arbitrated by the judiciary, are also not representative. So we have a long history. I can quote. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence which are great examples of our failures. All three organs. The executive, the Prime Minister sees the Parliament as a stepping stone to his office, and then generally ignores the Parliament. The Parliament itself, despite its claims to supremacy, sees its sphere of influence, its constitutional responsibility, its dignity violated, but does nothing. And the judiciary, perhaps in many ways, contributes to that. Because time and again, when parliaments were dissolved, by the sword, the only action that the judiciary took was to provide sanction to that action, to provide protection to that action. So there's a long history that we have to consider here. I didn't really want to talk about this, but I think there are a few things that we need to consider. And again, it all comes back to the institution itself. And it's the institution of the judiciary. Parliaments have a life of 5 years. Executive, on the average, half that much. But the judiciary stays. The state is 65, the judges stay till 65, the institution is never dissolved, hopefully. So, when we look at the judgments, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was hanged. History has rejected those decisions made by the courts, that decision made by the courts. But has the court ever expressed remorse on what happened to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto? Dr. Malik was here, Dr. Malik is sitting here. We were part of a very extensive arbitration process on a major issue in Pakistan, which came only because the Supreme Court did not perhaps understand where its powers lay or what its jurisdiction was. And as a result, Pakistan had to pay a price of $6 billion. Has there ever been remorse about that judgment? We have the executive, and perhaps now the parliament has found a solution to that issue. But it will be an issue that will be very divisive in the future, which will affect greatly the economy of this country. Who blame is not enough. Who do we go to perhaps rectify these situations that they don't happen in the future? In July 2017, a government which was performing to a reasonable level was dissolved because the Supreme Court became a trial court and decided to de-seat the Prime Minister because he had not taken money that came from a director's fees and which the Supreme Court in its wisdom declared an asset. What are the effects of these judgments? That is the question today. Can these judgments be quoted in the future? Are these judgments beneficial for the people of Pakistan? I'm not a lawyer, but I've been around in Parliament for a few years. And to me, the touchstone of any judgment, the natural arbiter of conflict or a grey area is common sense. Do the judgments of our courts reflect common sense? That's a question that the institution needs to ask itself, so that we do not repeat these mistakes in the future. Today, the highest court in the country is considering the amendments to the NAB ordinance. It's a court which enjoys suo motu powers and has in the past exercised those powers. The NAB ordinance has a history to it. It has a 23-year-old history of what and how and when that ordinance was used. Is the Supreme Court unaware of that? what is the effect of the NAB on the people of Pakistan and the country of Pakistan? Is the Supreme Court unaware of that? There's a very simple solution to this whole issue. And I can tell you from being in government, from being in opposition, that until the institution of NAB is there, Pakistan cannot function. Because the executive is paralyzed. One of the organs of state is paralyzed. The other organ, the parliament, is unable to take the correct decision to repeal the NAB ordinance. It knows the effects, but it's also aware of the effects of that repeal on its own reputation or the reputation of the parties in power. So now today, I expect the Supreme Court to not look at the wording of what the amendment is, but to look at what NAB has done to this country, to the thousands of billions of money, of resources that we have lost. Lost due to decisions not taken because of fear of NAB. We have to look at the tens of thousands of lives that have been destroyed. Is the Supreme Court unaware of these issues? It has a simple solution to it. It should repeal NAB. There are other statutes in place which provide accountability, if we want to do accountability. We are a people that are deceiving ourselves. Do we want accountability? Accountability has one simple principle. I have money, I have expenditure. Where did that money come from? Can I justify my lifestyle? Have I paid taxes on the money I've spent? One simple principle. I assure you, the parliament will be emptied. The benches will be emptied. Other institutions will be emptied. None of us are not guilty of this sin. Unfortunately, and we are unaware and we are unable. That's the reality of the issue today. Neither the parliament, neither the executive, neither the judiciary are able to address the reality, the real cause of issues. We look at the wordings, we look at the superficiality of these issues, and we try to fix that. I have heard some leaders in all of these institutions talk about legacy. You don't create legacies. You let your actions speak for themselves and let history judge you. That is a legacy. You don't create a legacy by inspecting hospitals, by undermining the functioning of the executive. My dear friend Iftikhar Gilani Sahab, he always had this huge debate that he carried on for years on whether the Supreme Court can overturn a constitutional amendment. And I think the answer still remains unclear to me at least. Perhaps it can, perhaps it cannot. But whatever action the judiciary takes if it undermines the parliament or the executive, it undermines the people of Pakistan. It affects the people of Pakistan. So let the judges be cognizant. They carry great responsibility. There's need for introspection. How many judiciaries in the world appoint judges themselves? How many promote themselves? What are the powers of the Chief Justice? Does he have to get there by seniority? We have a 20-year history of these issues. Is the institution stronger today? Are the judges more qualified? Are the decisions better? These questions need answers. So I thank you very much. I've taken a lot of your time. Very grateful. Thank you.